Welcome to the G5 Hive and our first installment of our Worker Bee Series 2025 edition, where we deep dive into the G5 college football landscape with the folks that know the teams the best. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review. Today we'll be taking a look at the Air Force Falcons, who finished 5-7 in 2024. They wrapped up their 2025 spring practice on March 19th. We have a special guest joining us today. He is an Air Force sports insider and mentor to many Air Force athletes. He is Rick Baum. Rick can be found at Falcon8Fan on X. Welcome to the show, Rick.
Hey, guys. It's good to be back again this year. Man, a lot's happened in the last 365 days.
We appreciate you coming back again, repeat guest. For the people who didn't join us last year, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to getting involved with Air Force sports and how long you've been there?
Well, so this is officially my 16th season as just an Air Force fan. First of all, the stuff that came along with that was some of the mentoring, very similar to Fellowship of Christian Athletes. I've been to 165 of the last 178 games. Very familiar with the team, and as you mentioned, I do mentor some current players, and I'm excited about this season. And I got some guys in the league now who you met last year, so everything's coming together. Air Force is bolt uprising, as I like to say.
Awesome, that's awesome to hear. Let's move over to the Air Force offense. For those not familiar with the offensive scheme that Air Force runs, how would you describe it to them?
It's about distribution. It's a fullback first setup that relies on a physical and very mobile offensive line. This scheme allows the quarterback initially three options right off the bat, and option is the key, right? Triple option. So fullback first, then you've got your tailback, and then the next thing that happens can be your Z, which is a slot, or your tight end or wide receiver. A lot of running in Air Force backfield.
The fullback, what would you say the percentage of the fullback dive is in their offense on any given week?
I think you'll typically see it a dozen times minimum.
It's definitely a staple.
So last season, Quentin Hayes played most of the games from this quarterback room, but John Boucher had the most pass snaps or the passing snap attempts. With Boucher no longer on the roster and Hayes not partaking in spring ball, what should we make of this quarterback room heading into 2025?
Well, it's a little bit of a question mark. I expect Quentin Hayes to be back. There's some stuff that we might get into a little bit later, but he's on the track to coming back. If he's not available, then you've got Josh Johnson, who took some snaps, had some really good moments. We also have a kid that I'm familiar with in Colorado, Liam Sarka. Sarka's a kid that just successful and an athlete in every sense of the word. So we'll kind of see. And then there's a lot of question marks after that.
When looking at the running back room, they return a lot of production from 2024, and they have a lot of depth heading into 2025. You got Dylan Carson, Owen Allen, Kate Harris, Christopher Frew, and Tyler Latham. They count for about 83% of the returning rushing attempts. What will this rushing attack look like in 2025?
Well, you mentioned Frew. He goes by Cade. Cade Frew is a kid out of Bowles High School in Jacksonville, Florida. Bowles produced guys like Mac Jones, a couple really awesome Air Force guys, Jordan Jackson for the Broncos. And this kid battled some injuries last year. He's a kind of a smaller in stature, but I'm telling you, this kid's going to have a breakout year. I'm calling it here. I see the work he's putting in, and it's going to translate. You mentioned the fullbacks, Allen and Carson. They're going to be a two-headed monster, splitting carries probably a little bit. We got another guy at the fullback position, young kid, going to be a sophomore, Travis Wood. His dad Joe was one of our kickers back in the day, probably one of the all-time leading scorers until the last decade or so. So I think that running game is going to be good. The guy that you'll see most will probably be Cade Harris. Cade is a kid out of Utah. His quarterback in high school is a guy that's coming up to be drafted. He was down at Ole Miss, and I forget, it's Jackson Dart.
Yes, Dart.
And yeah, that was his high school quarterback. So Cade Cade Harris is definitely our best player, I would say, maybe on both sides of the ball.
So, speaking of Cade, last season he led the team in receptions, routes ran, targets, yards, and touchdowns. Should we expect similar usage in 2025 for Cade in the passing game?
I would imagine they're going to game plan for him. If he's open, of course he'll get the ball. I believe there's more options this year. We talked about Cade Frew. You mentioned Ty Latham. You're going to see guys like Trey Roberson, Quinn Smith at wide receiver. You got a couple guys that are athletes also at the running back position. Rocco Conti, Caleb Killian. They're going to get some opportunities as well.
Last season, Dylan Carson got injured very early on, and seems like we didn't really see him again until probably the halfway through, and he really picked up. His rushing numbers and rushing attempts really picked up towards the end of the season. Do you think he's going to pick up kind of where he left off, and has he fully recovered from whatever ailed him last year?
Well, at the beginning of his career, he wore number 20. He wears number 5 now. And in respect to when he wore 20, he reminded me a lot of Brad Roberts, who was led the nation in rushing a couple years back, I think 3 years back. And, I think he's going to have a breakout year. This kid's got that gear, that extra speed that Brad had. And like I had mentioned, that change of pace with Owen Allen I think it's going to be, pretty incredible to watch, and we got another guy I didn't mention, Cade Palmer. He's a local kid also. So the ball is going to be distributed nice amongst the fullbacks. I think we're going to see some special stuff.
The wide receiver room loses 2 of its top 3 wide receivers from a year ago, but they return their top wide receiver in terms of yardage in Quinn Smith. What are your expectations for this wide receiver room in 2025?
Well, as you know, at Air Force, I would say we throw to the receiver when we've hit you with a bunch of counters and fullback dives and and a couple sweeps. So that's the best part about this offense. When we do pass the ball, we have the ability to be efficient. Not always, but we hit a lot of those big plays. I'm telling you, they've got some guys. You mentioned Quinn Smith. We got a kid mentioned earlier, Trey Roberson. Trey is a big target. I haven't seen a big wide receiver like him since maybe DC back 3 years ago. So he's a guy. He had a long touchdown. I think it was against Navy, which was a poor showing last year, but a physical kid who can catch the ball.
So with the loss of England Rosenose, do you expect this room's usage to increase, decrease from this coming season, or will it be more of kind of what we know from Air Force?
I think the latter. I think it'll be if we're throwing the ball more than usual, then some things have went wrong, because we are a run first, second, and maybe third team.
If you were to describe how the tight ends are utilized in this offense to someone that hasn't seen an Air Force game, how would you describe it?
A sixth offensive lineman would uh, probably be the best description. Big kids, they've always had big tight ends. Our senior Bruin Fleischman, good sized kid, and he'll lull you to sleep with some good hands across the middle or maybe an out route. But I'll tell you, if you watch some of our sideline to sideline runs, which we'll do to change it up, you'll have your tight ends and your wide receivers out there for sure.
Speaking of Bruin Fleischman, you return him as well as Parker Menifee and Rain Broadway, who saw some limited action a year ago. How did that room look this spring, and was anyone really standing out to you?
It looked big. These are some big kids. What I saw mostly was their work with the offensive line. In a couple of the spring scrimmages, they tried some short passes with some success, but ultimately, anytime we were 5 yards or more downfield, one of these guys was typically in the mix.
So everything really starts with those guys up front in the trenches. Air Force had to replace a lot of production heading into 2024. This group really seemed to find their groove towards the end of the season, especially like those last 4 games, starting with Fresno State. But you'll have to replace that right side of the line heading into 2025. How did the offensive line shape up and look during spring practice?
Well, in actuality, you're only really replacing one guy. We had one guy that was a true senior. You had mentioned it. They really came together at the end of the season. Um, we got a kid that's not on the roster yet that I wrote about a couple weeks ago, Luke Vandahar. He's gonna come back. He's a 315 pounder, mobile. We've got Alec Falk at guard. His dad Carl was a big Air Force offensive lineman. I say big because back when Carl played, 275 was huge. Now, that line is all well over 300 pounds. Costin Cooley at center, he's looking good. I'll tell you, as a position group, the offensive line and the defensive line um, are probably our best position group, in my opinion.
So who do you think gets the nod snap one at that right tackle and right guard position?
Man, I really got to see what it looks like when we get into heavy contact. We played mostly current freshmen, sophomores to be, and some other guys up from the prep school that will be on the roster next year. Um, the offensive line got a lot of work, but they didn't get a lot of snaps and scrimmages. So I'm gonna hold out on that. But I'll tell you, we've got the best offensive line coach, I believe, in the country. Uh, Coach Lobo, Steed Lebowski. He was one of the premier offensive linemen in Air Force days. Like I said, probably tall and skinny back then, but he always puts a good group together, and they're always fighting Michigan for some of the best O line in the country.
If you had to pick an offensive player to have a breakout season in 2025, who would that be?
Well, I'm going to kind of go back to when we started this broadcast. I'm going to go with Cade Frew. I really believe that this kid is going to catch fire this year. I mean, we saw small glimpses of him at 60%, 50% with high ankle and some calf issues. I I tell you, I followed this kid from the recruiting process. If you look at in the Florida record books, this is one of the top 5 rushers in high school football when he was playing, and I really think they got lightning in a bottle. And if he stays healthy, he's gonna wow you guys.
Look forward to it.
And here's his jersey number, by the way, number 8. This is Bo's, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Well, let's move over to the defensive side of the ball. And those, again, not familiar with the Falcons defense, can you describe the style and scheme that they run?
Well, they've got a look. It's kind of like it appears to be on first glance like a kind of a 3-4 setup. They've got their linebacker positions are interchangeable, and they've got basically that fourth and or fifth linebacker, depending on their alignment, that is actually a hybrid, right? He's a defensive back / linebacker. He's usually a bit bigger, but he's also fast. That has been a position over the years that a lot of really talented Air Force players have played. The Air Force defense begins at the line of scrimmage, and like I had mentioned when you were asking about position groups, I think this defensive line is special. I really do.
Well, similar to a year ago, we talked about a lot of lost production, and it seems to happen again this year on the defensive side of the ball, losing 10 of their top 13 players based on snap counts, about 68% of their tackling production, and 70% of their sack production from a year ago. How did the defensive unit as a whole look this spring?
Well, the defensive line was all guys that you saw last year, and then it was a little bit of a mixture after that. I really believe it's a talented group, but you exposed one of the things that people are going to be looking at this year. They're going to wonder how this new group is going to gel. If it starts at the defensive line, then it's going to look pretty good. You've got Aiden Swartz at one end. You've got Daniel Groby at the other. These are big guys that have been around, 6'6", 6'7" on each end. And in the middle, you've got probably the best defensive player, Peyton Zadroik. Peyton's dad, Dan, was a running back for Air Force back in the day. And Peyton is, believe it or not, a 6th-year senior because of turnbacks for medical issues. He was also at the prep academy as well. So he is a man, and he is a big man.
Well, talking about these defensive linemen, the Falcons will miss a promising youngster in David Santiago, who transferred to Michigan State, James Tomasi, who graduated, but it looks like an experienced room heading into the season. You've waxed poetic, Justice, about this room. Who you talked about Schwartz, you talked about Zadroink, you talked about Groby. Who's standing out to you?
I saw a kid that was making a transition. That fourth or fifth linebacker that I talked about, that position is called the bandit position, right? So I seen a kid that was maybe a little big for the bandit last year. He played a little bit, but now we'll see him, probably on the edge. He's a kid by the name of Jackson Adams, number 58, local kid from Colorado. He's got a lot of potential, man. I'll tell you, if he shows up at 50 to 70% of his potential, you're going to start thinking about, hey, what was that kid, Bo Richter? I remember him. Bo groomed Jackson back in the day, and I really think he's waiting to have a breakout. There's another kid by the name of Cam Matthews on that defensive line, just a sophomore, 305 pounds and probably growing. Jaden Okendo, a junior, number 55. He'll be somebody that you'll see around that defensive line area.
Last season, we do this thing during the season called our 2020 players. Basically, the top players at each position in the G5, and several times for defensive tackles, Peyton Zadroik was in our top 5. For defensive tackles, we use Havoc rate, which is sacks, pressures, third and fourth down stops, and Peyton's a pretty talented kid. I think he has all conference potential in 2025 for Air Force.
Yeah, very accurate. I believe that. his battle has always been staying healthy. So I'm hoping he has a healthy season.
So let's move over to the linebackers. They lose their top 2 tacklers from a year ago, and Osaro Ai
Yep.
and Grant Uli. They do return the likes of Blake Fletcher, Luke Fisher, and Dallas Daly. Who needs to step up in this room for this defense to be successful in 2025?
Well, in this room, you mentioned some guys that are going to see a lot of snaps. There's a guy by the name of Ty Hubert. He'll be involved, and then a kid that I really saw make some growth between 2024 and then spring ball in 25 is a kid by the name of Chances Carter-Hill. Big guy. He spent this last spring break down in Texas working with a lot of NFL guys. He's a guy that you're going to say, oh, yeah, Rick mentioned him. Another guy is a guy by the name of Harry Caskey, just a sophomore, highly recruited out of Ogallala, Nebraska. Good sized kid, has great instincts. Unfortunately, this room did lose more of a well skilled backup and real potential starter in Drew Dubosset. He unfortunately blew his knee out in spring, and Drew will be in some capacity with the team, but that was a tough loss.
Who? Any predictions on who you think we see out there week 1 for the linebackers?
Probably that core group that you mentioned. I think Carter-Hill will definitely be in that rotation. I know that they've got some guys that are kind of tweeners, right? Guys that are big defensive backs, but maybe a little smaller to be linebacker. There's going to be some of those competitions that are going to influence the final verdict, but definitely, you got to start with Fletcher. He's a tackling machine.
So the defensive backfield probably took the biggest hits in the offseason. They lose top 2 leading tacklers from a year ago, and Jamari Bellamy and Camby Goff graduate. Houston Hendricks and Jerome Gilliard Jr. Graduate. And then you got Trey Williams and Lincoln T.O.T. Mariner. They transfer. Those 6 accounted for 84% of the secondary snaps. Are there players in waiting in the wings ready to step up and take those roles? And how did this group look in the spring?
Well, first and foremost, I hope so. They had some moments. I saw some, some of the younger guys getting some pick sixes and stuff. Names you're going to hear leading with Levi Brown, whether Levi is a free or strong or maybe even an occasional bandit. He's our leader, I would imagine, in the defensive backfield. Kyle Chan, Jet Wiley, Evan Rao. These are guys that you're going to see back there. And there's some younger guys that I'm hoping get an opportunity just to develop, not because we have to have them in early.
All right, if you had to pick a defensive player to have a breakout type season in 2025, who would that be?
Well, to break out, it would definitely be CCH, Chances Carter-Hill. I think he's going to be big. It's going to look to a lot of people, guys that they haven't heard of that, I think Daniel Groby on the defensive line is primed to get his name recognized at all conference as well.
How are the special teams units looking? Do you have any concerns heading into the season?
Boy, you're talking about our probably our most experienced group. Overall, I would say, and it doesn't look like it in some areas, but I'm going to tell you. So we just graduated or about to graduate a 4-year starter, Matthew DePore. Matt became the all-time leading scorer in the history of Air Force football when we beat Fresno State to break our losing streak. Matt's a grad student going up, so he's got some good things going on. But the group overall, Reagan Tubbs was his backup. Couple years ago, Matthew was sick when we were going through some of the virus stuff, so Reagan came in against San Jose State. I believe he was 3 for 3 on field goals and 2 for 2 on extra points. He's been our kickoff guy, so he's not a stranger to being on the field. Luke Freer is our punter, big punter. This guy was all conference, second team in the Mountain West, big leg. Behind him is probably a name Air Force fans are familiar with, a kid by the name of Rip Perez. His dad, Rob Perez, beat Ohio State in the Liberty Bowl back in the early 90s. And another kid with Air Force pedigree. Kurt Chesney's four-year starter at long snapper. And behind him is a kid that I like. He has some good size, Dom Diaz from Florida. And he's probably going to travel this year. And he'll be another good. We've had Air Force long snappers drafted in the NFL before.
Now that spring practice is over, which position group or groups is the most concerning heading into 2025?
Well, I think our lead is concerning. We started off with what does the quarterback position look like? That concerns me. If Quentin Hayes is not available, we're going to really have to grow a little bit, and that's okay. We don't depend on the quarterback as much as you might think in this offense. So aside from that position, the defensive backs probably are going to really need to someone's going to have to step up.
Would you say that's probably I would assume that's probably the cornerbacks more so than the safeties?
Correct.
And so unlike most other programs where they can go shopping, if you will, and the transfer portal, that's not something that happens very often in terms of Air Force. So how do they address those concerns? I assume they just continue to try and build that depth through practices, right?
Well, the thing about it, and you're absolutely right. There's no transfer portal to come in. You have to be appointed to go to the Air Force Academy, and it's it may even be more mental than physical. And so when you get an Air Force athlete, you've got somebody that's really special and well-rounded. Now, as far as what do they do to keep them? Well, as you mentioned during the defense, we lost more than normal recently, but really what you show them is you show them a program that's based on team. You're in a military environment that's based on team, and it's all encompassing. Everything they do, it's unlike anything I've ever seen in Division I football. And I've had a little bit of a perspective to see some of the Navy and Army stuff as well. What we do at Air Force is amazing.
What do you think is going to be the main strength of this team in 2025?
Well, I think offensively, I think the strength is going to be just relying on that offensive line and running the ball. You mentioned fullback dive. Let's see if we can move them and then get them off balance and do something. And defensively, I think the strength, like I said before, if we can own that box, then maybe we'll get some young guys getting opportunities and we'll do well. It's a fairly tough schedule too.
What does success look like for the Air Force Falcons in 2025?
Well, I'll tell you, a bowl. Absolutely. It looks a bowl at any level. That would be a successful season, in my opinion. I would love to tell you that we're going to win the Commander-in-Chief trophy because I want to. The kids want to every year, and that will be the goal. And we'll talk about schedule in a second, but bowl game would be success.
And this isn't just lip service, guys. If you followed us last year, Rick predicted the 5-7 season right on the dot. So this team is going to be a different team here in 2025. Rick, can you tell us a little bit about some of the rigors that the Service Academy athletes experience that most other college athletes don't?
I think it starts with academics. The workload that these cadet athletes have is unlike anything I've ever seen. I mean, it's not infrequent to begin a day at 5 a.m. and to wrap a day up, sometime around midnight. And in between, you've got anything from depending on what your major is, a very full academic day. Then you have your football obligations, whether they be your lifts or your film study or a lot of team building stuff. When they're not in the classroom, in the weight room, or watching film, they're serving their community. They're doing things that continue to benefit not only the team but local Colorado Springs, which is a cool deal. I love to see these kids so involved.
One thing you alluded to earlier, and we talked about it or talked around it last year with you and Sal from Army, but and we didn't know about it until we heard about it last year. But I would assume most football fans don't know anything about it. But can you tell us a little bit about these service academies have these prep schools? I don't know what the right word is for them, but where these guys kind of go before they kind of get called up to the big leagues, if you will. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I can tell you a little bit about the P, as we call it, the Air Force Preparatory Academy. They're the Huskies over there. They also play football. My experience has been if somebody isn't as strong a student as they would like to be, or is maybe just missing in certain areas academically, they can come to the prep school and they can get into that way of life. Now, one of the things that's a little rough, they've got all their stuff that they do, for prepping for military training, and then if they're able to go to up the hill to the academy, then they got to do it again. They got to do Jacks Valley and stuff like that. So you get some of these prep school kids that make it. It's not a huge percentage, to be honest with you, but some of them that make it really turn out to be special cadet athletes.
We talked about this as well last year, but just kind of for some fans that might be watching us for the first time, can you tell us about the unique circumstances that an Air Force athlete or any service academy athlete has to deal with, in terms of, a future professional career?
Yeah, over the years, that's really been a question of what is the administration's take on it. We were fortunate enough last year, and we had Trey Taylor and Bo Richter on the show, and also did a follow up with them, and they were a group that had they graduated when they were supposed to, they may have had to do service first and then play. They did get an exception because they had the COVID exemption and stuff. So their class was able to play professionally first. I've seen guys with huge upside potential, a Weston Steelhammer or Jalen Robinette, guys that were going to be drafted, but they were told they had to do their 2-year minimum first. And so it just depends. Right now, they're still working off the last administration. They would have an obligation to serve their 2 years. Do I expect that to change shortly? Absolutely, I do.
And there's also a unique circumstance with the athletes in terms of a commitment. When they're committed to those obligations, can you talk about a little bit about that? 'Cause I think probably the most famous athlete probably right now, I guess, would be Paul Skeens, right? The pitcher would be the most famous one I could think of that was able to, use those rules. But can you tell our fans a little bit about that?
Yeah, so and Paul's a friend of mine. I'm very happy with his success and so at the Air Force Academy, when you come there, and whether you start at the prep school or whatever, when you are at the end of your sophomore year, you are allowed without any penalty, allowed to transfer portal or leave or whatever. Paul left baseball at the academy after winning Mountain West Pitcher of the Year, and he went to LSU and won a national championship and was, as you had alluded to, the first pick in the MLB draft and has been very successful. Now, have I seen other people leave after their sophomore year and be very successful? A handful, absolutely. Um, they are allowed to do that. Now, after that, going into your junior year, they basically have a ceremony where they recommit and they say, okay, not only am I going to finish my remaining 2 years, I'm also going to serve for a whatever period of time that's designated, and it's pretty cool. I mean, I've seen these are kids you meet at 17 years old, and by the time they go through this process at 23, 24, they are set up in six-figure careers with a lot of responsibility defending the freedoms of the United States. It's incredible.
Well, Rick, we've kind of come to the end of our time. Is there anything else that you want to share or think that we should know about this 2025 Air Force football team?
You're going to see a lot of heart. I got a friend of mine. His name is Mike Simler. His dad, George B. Simler, founded the Commander in Chief Trophy. He was a former athletic director, uh, an amazing man. Died way too soon, but it all comes down to, all of those codes, right? Those honor code things, integrity, honesty, determination, all those things that they teach at the Air Force Academy. You're going to see that in this group. This is a young, impressionable group, and Coach Calhoun has probably, in my mind, coached up this group to their potential, and I think that they're going to surprise some people this year.
Rick, before we let you go, I had one other kind of quick question. I guess there's going to be some change. I guess starting next year with the conference, right? Can you share us, I guess, your thoughts and was there ever I don't know if you say danger, but an opportunity or a chance that maybe Air Force was gonna make a change? I know a lot of people talk about, hey, we'd love to see him in the American. You get all three academies together, but I don't know that was there any truth to that, or that's just wishful thinking.
I think it was a possibility at one time. Really, to be honest with you, and you know, I'd want to excuse myself if someone has a stronger opinion, but it comes down to money, really. The guys that stuck around, they didn't want to pay that penalty. I mean, you're gonna see some teams, that you haven't seen that are gonna come into our conference. Your stalwarts like Boise State, they're sticking around, and you're gonna see some leave. But overall, we would have left if the situation was right for us. There was some talk about some Big 12 stuff, and you had mentioned the American Conference. I I really hope there's an opportunity for a realignment in our lifetime to where we just get a more consistent brand of, because we're just as good as a lot of the big guys, as with the G5, and it's coming. There's going to be some big things coming this year.
Well, Rick, we want to thank you for taking some time out of your day to spend with us and share your knowledge. We greatly appreciate it.
Hey, I appreciate you guys. I'm looking forward to some future collaborations like we did last year.
Absolutely.
Hey, if you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you all for your support. Until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.